The rain hammered against the windows of the Lone Star Diner as Savannah Walker watched the 8-year-old boy devour his third helping of chicken and waffles. His expensive clothes were soaked, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, but his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, held a loneliness that made her heart ache. She had no idea that feeding this hungry child would change everything. She had no idea that his father was Nikolai Volkov, the most feared man in Houston. And she certainly had no idea that in 3 weeks, this same man would be standing in her diner, his white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a glimpse of the intricate tattoo on his neck, his platinum Rolex catching the light as he reached for her hand and said words that would echo through her soul forever. But right now, all she knew was that a child needed help, and Savannah Walker had never been able to turn away from someone in need. The sweltering Houston heat pressed against the windows of the Lone Star Diner like an unwelcome visitor, but inside, the air conditioning hummed steadily. Savannah Walker wiped down the counter for the 3rd time in an hour, her movements automatic and weary. The lunch rush had been pathetic, only 6 customers in 4 hours. "You're gonna wear a hole in that Formica," Lily Mae Johnson called from behind the grill, her Texas drawl thick with concern. "Honey, maybe it's time we talked about—" "Don't." Savannah's voice was sharp, then immediately softened. "I'm sorry, Lily Mae, I just can't give up on this place. It's all I have left of Grandma Maggie." The diner had been in the Walker family for 40 years. Magnolia Walker had built it from nothing, serving honest food to honest people in what used to be a thriving working-class neighborhood. But East Downtown Houston was changing. Luxury condos sprouted like weeds, pushing out long-time residents and small businesses. Savannah glanced at the stack of bills tucked behind the register. 3 months behind on rent, 2 months behind on utilities. At 28, she felt ancient, carrying the weight of a dying dream on her shoulders. The bell above the door chimed, and Savannah looked up hopefully. Instead of a customer, she saw a small figure silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun. A child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, stood hesitantly in the doorway. His clothes were expensive, designer jeans and a polo shirt that probably cost more than Savannah made in a week, but he was soaked to the bone. "Sweetie, are you okay?" Savannah hurried around the counter, her maternal instincts kicking in immediately. The boy had the most striking blue eyes she'd ever seen, pale as winter sky but somehow warm. His dark hair was plastered to his head, and he was shivering despite the heat outside. I got lost," he said quietly, his voice carrying just the faintest hint of an accent she couldn't place. "My babysitter, she was talking on the phone, and I went to look at the fountain, and when I came back, she was gone." "Oh, honey." Savannah knelt down to his level, her heart breaking at the fear in those young eyes. "What's your name?" "Alex," he whispered. "Alexander Volkov." "Well, Alex, I'm Savannah, and this is my diner. Why don't we get you dried off and fed while we figure out how to get you home, okay?" Lily Mae appeared with a clean dish towel, and together they got Alex settled in a corner booth. Savannah brought him a glass of chocolate milk and started preparing a plate of chicken and waffles, the diner's specialty and her grandmother's secret recipe. "I've never had chicken and waffles before," Alex admitted, watching her work with curious eyes. "Well, you're in for a treat, sugar. My Grandma Maggie used to say this dish could cure anything from a broken heart to a bad day." As Alex ate, his reserved demeanor began to crack. He told them about his private school, about his nanny who was always on the phone with her boyfriend, and about how he spent most afternoons alone in his room playing chess against the computer. There was something heartbreakingly adult about the way he spoke. "Do you have a mom and dad?" Lily Mae asked gently. Alex's face clouded over. "My mama died when I was little. Papa is always working. He says it's important work, but I don't really understand what he does." Savannah felt her chest tighten. This beautiful, intelligent child was essentially raising himself. An hour passed, then 2. Alex helped Savannah refill the napkin dispensers and even convinced her to play a game of checkers using sugar packets. "I should probably call someone," Savannah said reluctantly. "Do you know your father's phone number?" Alex recited a number, and Savannah dialed, expecting to reach a harried businessman. Instead, a deep voice answered on the first ring. speaking rapid Russian before switching to English. Volkov. The single word was delivered with such authority that Savannah felt a shiver run down her spine. Hello. I have your son Alex here at the Lone Star Diner. Is he hurt? The voice cut through her words like a blade. No, he's fine. He got separated from his babysitter and... Address. Now. Savannah rattled off the diner's location, her hands trembling slightly. There was something in that voice, a barely controlled danger that made her instinctively step closer to Alex. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Before Savannah could respond, 2 black SUVs pulled up outside. Her breath caught in her throat as she watched several men in expensive suits emerge from the vehicles, positioning themselves around the diner's entrance like sentries. Then he stepped out of the lead vehicle. Tall and broad-shouldered, the man moved with the fluid grace of a predator. His dark hair was perfectly styled despite the Houston humidity, and his charcoal grey suit was clearly custom-tailored. But it was his eyes that made Savannah's mouth go dry, the same pale blue as Alex's, but harder, colder, like chips of Arctic ice. He strode through the diner's entrance, and Savannah noticed the way his white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the edge of an intricate tattoo that curved along his neck. A platinum Rolex gleamed on his wrist as he scanned the room, his gaze finally settling on Alex. "Papa!" Alex scrambled out of the booth and ran to the man, who caught him in a fierce embrace. "Alexander," he murmured against the boy's hair, and Savannah realized the accent she'd heard in Alex's voice was Russian. "You scared me. I'm sorry, Papa. I got lost. But Miss Savannah took care of me. She made me chicken and waffles, and we played checkers, and she didn't even ask for money or anything." Those ice-blue eyes turned to Savannah, and she felt pinned in place like a butterfly on a board. "You fed my son," he said, his voice carrying that same subtle accent as Alex's. "Of course I did. He was hungry and scared." Savannah lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated, despite the way her heart was hammering. Any decent person would have done the same. Something flickered across his features, surprise maybe, or confusion. "And you want nothing in return?" "I want to make sure he gets home safely, that's all." He studied her for a long moment, his gaze taking in her simple sundress, her work-worn hands, the faded apron tied around her waist. "What is your name?" "Savannah Walker." "Savannah Walker," he repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "I am Nikolai Volkov, and it seems I am in your debt." "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Volkov. I was just doing what anyone would do." "No," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Not anyone. Most people would have called the police immediately or demanded payment. You are not like most people, Savannah Walker." Alex tugged on his father's sleeve. "Papa, can we come back tomorrow? Miss Savannah said she'd teach me how to make her grandmother's biscuits." Nikolai's gaze sharpened. "Did she now?" "I mean, if it's okay with you," Savannah said quickly. "Alex mentioned he spends a lot of time alone, and I thought he might enjoy learning to cook." "And what would you charge for these cooking lessons?" The question stung. "I wouldn't charge anything. I like Alex. He's a good kid." For a moment the mask slipped, and Savannah caught a glimpse of something vulnerable in Nikolai's expression. Then it was gone. "We will discuss this," he said finally. "Alex, say goodbye to Miss Savannah." Alex hugged her tightly. "Thank you for taking care of me," he whispered. "Any time, sweetheart, you're welcome here whenever you want." Nikolai placed a hand on his son's shoulder, guiding him toward the door. But at the threshold he turned back. "Miss Walker," he said, his voice carrying a weight she didn't understand. "Be careful who you trust in this neighborhood. Not everyone has good intentions." And then they were gone, leaving Savannah staring after them with more questions than answers, and the strangest feeling that her quiet, predictable life had just taken a turn into uncharted territory. 3 days passed before Alex returned, but when he did, Savannah's face lit up like Christmas morning. He arrived in the same black SUV, though this time only one bodyguard accompanied him, a mountain of a man with kind eyes who introduced himself simply as Jackson. "Miss Savannah!" Alex bounded through the door with enthusiasm, Papa said I could come for cooking lessons, but only if Jackson stays to watch. Savannah glanced at the bodyguard, who nodded politely. Mr. Volkov's orders, ma'am. I'll just sit in the corner. As Savannah tied an apron around Alex's waist, one of her grandmother's old ones that nearly dragged the floor on his small frame, she couldn't help but wonder about Nikolai Volkov. What kind of man needed bodyguards for his 8-year-old son? Papa has a lot of meetings, Alex said, as if reading her thoughts while he measured flour into a bowl. Important people come to the house all the time. They talk in Russian mostly, but sometimes I hear them arguing. Arguing about what? Savannah asked, then immediately regretted the question. Alex shrugged. Business stuff. Papa says I'm too young to understand, but I think it's about territory. Like in chess, you have to control the board to win. The casual way he spoke about such adult concepts made Savannah's chest tighten. This child had been exposed to things no 8-year-old should know about. Well, she said brightly, today we're going to focus on something much more important than business. We're going to learn the secret to perfect buttermilk biscuits. For the next 2 hours, Alex threw himself into the lesson with intensity. He asked detailed questions about gluten development and the science behind baking powder, displaying an intelligence that was both impressive and slightly heartbreaking. Miss Savannah, he said as they waited for the biscuits to bake, why don't you have kids of your own? The question hit her like a physical blow. Savannah turned away, busying herself with cleaning the mixing bowls. Sometimes things just don't work out the way we plan, sweetheart. Did you want kids? Very much. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Alex studied her with those 2 old eyes. I think you'd be a really good mama. Savannah's throat tightened. Thank you, Alex. That's one of the nicest things anyone's ever said to me. When the biscuits emerged from the oven, golden and perfect, Alex's face glowed with pride. Wait until Papa tries these. He's going to be so impressed. Why don't you take some home to him? Savannah suggested, packing a dozen biscuits into a container. That evening, as Savannah closed up the diner, she found herself thinking about the Volkov men. There was something deeply sad about their situation, a father too consumed with work to properly connect with his son, and a child desperate for attention and affection. The next morning brought an unexpected surprise. Savannah arrived at the diner to find a massive floral arrangement waiting by the front door. White roses and lilies arranged with an elegance that spoke of serious money. The card was simple. Thank you for your kindness. N. Volkov. Alex arrived that afternoon with Jackson in tow, but this time he wasn't alone. Nikolai Volkov stepped out of the SUV, and Savannah's breath caught in her throat. In the bright afternoon sunlight, he was even more striking than she remembered. His white dress shirt was again unbuttoned at the collar, and she caught another glimpse of that intriguing tattoo. The platinum Rolex on his wrist caught the light as he adjusted his cufflinks. Miss Walker, he said, inclining his head slightly, I hope you don't mind the intrusion. Alex insisted I try these famous biscuits. The diner suddenly felt smaller with Nikolai in it. He moved with the same predatory grace she remembered, his pale eyes taking in every detail of the space. When he slid into the corner booth, Savannah noticed how the other customers seemed to sense his presence. Papa, sit here! Alex patted the seat beside him. Miss Savannah, can you bring Papa some biscuits? As Savannah prepared a plate, she was acutely aware of Nikolai watching her every movement. When she set the food in front of him, their fingers brushed briefly, and she felt an electric shock run up her arm. Thank you, he said quietly, his accent more pronounced than she remembered. She watched nervously as he took a bite, his expression unreadable. Then something shifted in his features, surprise perhaps or appreciation. This is, he paused, searching for words. My grandmother used to make something similar, back in Russia. I haven't tasted anything like this in 20 years. Your grandmother was a baker. Among other things. His smile was brief, but genuine. She raised me after my parents died, taught me that food made with love tastes different than food made for profit. The admission was so unexpected, so personal, that Savannah felt something shift between them. For a moment, the dangerous stranger was gone, replaced by a man sharing a cherished memory. Alex tells me you've been teaching him to cook, Nikolai continued. He's a natural, Very precise, very focused. He reminds me of myself at that age. And what were you like at that age? Savannah smiled. Determined to prove I could do anything the adults could do, usually with mixed results. My grandmother was very patient with me. Your grandmother raised you as well? Mostly my parents worked a lot. She didn't mention that her father had worked himself into an early grave, or that her mother had retreated so far into grief that she'd barely acknowledged Savannah's existence. It seems we have something in common then, Nikolai said softly. Their eyes met across the table, and Savannah felt that electric current again. There was something happening here, something she didn't fully understand but couldn't deny. Papa, Alex interrupted. Miss Savannah said she'd teach me how to make cornbread tomorrow. Can I come back? Nikolai's gaze never left Savannah's face. If Miss Walker doesn't mind having you, then yes. When they prepared to leave, Nikolai lingered by the counter while Alex said goodbye to Lily May. The flowers were beautiful, Savannah said quietly. Thank you. It was nothing. He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. Alex talks about you constantly. You've made quite an impression on him. He's made quite an impression on me, too. He's a special kid. Yes, he is. Nikolai's voice carried a note of fierce protectiveness. He's everything good in my world. The raw emotion in his words made Savannah's chest tighten. Whatever else Nikolai Volkov might be, he was a father who loved his son deeply. Miss Walker, he said as Alex rejoined them, perhaps you would join us for dinner sometime. Alex has been asking, and I would like to return your hospitality. The invitation caught her off guard. That's very kind, but you don't need to. I would like to, he said simply, if you're willing. Savannah looked at Alex's hopeful face, then back at Nikolai's intense blue eyes. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a bad idea, but there was something about the way Nikolai looked at her that made her want to say yes. Okay, she heard herself say, I'd like that. As she watched them drive away, Lily May appeared at her shoulder. Honey, her friend said quietly, I don't know what kind of business that man's in, but it ain't the legal kind. You be careful. Savannah nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late for careful. Something had been set in motion the moment Alex walked through her door, and she was powerless to stop it. The dinner invitation came 2 days later in the form of a handwritten note from Nikolai. Would you join Alex and me for dinner tonight? I'll send a car at 7. N. At exactly 7 o'clock, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up outside the diner. Jackson emerged from the driver's seat and opened the rear door for her. The Volkov mansion was breathtaking, a sprawling modern structure of glass and stone that seemed to glow from within. This wasn't just wealth, this was serious money. Alex met her at the front door, practically bouncing with excitement. Miss Savannah, you came. Wait until you see the house. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, and artwork that looked like it belonged in a museum. But despite the obvious expense, the space felt cold, more like a showpiece than a home. Alex, give Miss Walker a chance to breathe, came a familiar voice from the top of a sweeping staircase. Savannah looked up to see Nikolai descending, and her mouth went dry. Gone was the business suit. Instead, he wore dark slacks and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. The top few buttons were undone, giving her another glimpse of that intriguing tattoo, and his platinum Rolex caught the light from an enormous crystal chandelier. Savannah, he said, her name sounding different in his accented voice. Welcome to our home. Thank you for inviting me. Your house is beautiful. It serves its purpose. There was something dismissive in his tone, as if the mansion's grandeur meant nothing to him. Come, let me show you around. They ended up in the kitchen, the only room that felt truly lived in. It was enormous but warm, with professional-grade appliances and a large island where Alex was already perched. I hope you don't mind, Nikolai said, but I took the liberty of preparing dinner myself. My chef has the evening off. Savannah blinked in surprise. You cook? My grandmother insisted I learn. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was no man at all. The meal was incredible, perfectly seasoned beef stroganoff with homemade noodles. But what struck Savannah most was watching Nikolai with Alex. Away from the public eye, his entire demeanor softened. He listened patiently to his son's stories, helped him cut his meat and ruffled his hair with genuine affection. "Papa learned to cook from babushka," Alex explained between bites. "She lived with us in Russia before she died. Babushka spoiled him terribly," Nikolai said with a fond smile. "I miss her," Alex said quietly. "I know, Malish. I miss her too." After dinner, Alex insisted on showing Savannah his room, a child's paradise complete with every gaming system known to man. But what caught her attention was the chess set on a small table by the window. "Do you play?" Nikolai asked from the doorway. "A little. My grandmother taught me." "Would you like to finish this game with me?" Alex was losing badly and abandoned it for his video games. As they settled at the chessboard, Savannah studied the position. Nikolai was indeed winning, but Alex had made some clever moves for an 8-year-old. "He's quite good for his age," she observed. "Chess teaches strategic thinking, patience, the ability to see several moves ahead." Nikolai moved his knight. Useful skills in any endeavor. Savannah countered with a move that surprised him. "My grandmother always said chess was like life. You have to protect what matters most while still moving forward. Wise woman." They played in comfortable silence for a while. Savannah found herself studying Nikolai's hands as he moved his pieces. Strong, elegant fingers that handled the delicate wooden figures with surprising gentleness. "Tell me about your grandmother," he said suddenly. "Magnolia Walker was the strongest woman I ever knew. She raised me after my parents, well, after they couldn't anymore, built the diner from nothing, worked 16-hour days, and still found time to teach me everything from chess to cornbread." Savannah moved her bishop. "She died 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. What about your grandmother?" Nikolai's expression grew distant. "Fierce, protective. She survived Stalin's purges, World War II, and the collapse of the Soviet Union. Nothing could break her spirit." He paused, studying the board. "She would have liked you." "Why do you say that?" "Because you fed her great-grandson without asking for anything in return. Because you see people, not just what they can do for you." He moved his rook. "Checkmate." She stared at the board, then laughed. "You're very good at this." As the evening wound down, Savannah found herself reluctant to leave. Alex had fallen asleep on the couch, and Nikolai carried him upstairs with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "He likes you," Nikolai said when he returned. "Alex doesn't trust easily, but he's completely taken with you." "The feeling is mutual. He's an amazing kid." "Yes, he is. Sometimes I worry that my work has robbed him of a normal childhood." It was the first direct reference he'd made to whatever it was he did for a living. Savannah chose her words carefully. Every child's childhood is different. What matters is that he knows he's loved, and he absolutely knows that. Nikolai studied her face in the soft light. "You would make an excellent mother." The comment hit her like a physical blow. That's not in the cards for me." "Why not?" How could she explain about the miscarriage that had destroyed her marriage and left her feeling broken, about the doctors who gently explained that her chances were slim? "Sometimes life doesn't work out the way we plan," she said finally. Nikolai moved closer and she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her pulse quicken. "Life rarely works out as planned, but sometimes it gives us something better than what we originally wanted." The intensity in his voice made her look up, and she found herself caught in those pale blue eyes. For a moment, the air between them crackled with electricity, and she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back. "I should get you home. It's late." The ride back was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts. When Jackson pulled up outside her building, Nikolai walked her to the door. "Thank you for tonight," Savannah said. "Dinner was wonderful." "Thank you for coming. Alex will be talking about this for weeks." They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Finally, Nikolai reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle but electric. "Savannah," he said quietly, "there are things about my life, about who I am, that you don't understand. Things that could be dangerous. I know you're not exactly a regular businessman." His smile was rueful. "That's an understatement. I'm trying to protect you by keeping my distance, but Alex has other ideas." "And what do you have in mind?" "I don't know," he admitted. "For the first time in years, I don't have a plan." Before she could respond, he leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her cheek, his lips lingering just long enough to make her breath catch. "Good night, Savannah Walker." As she watched him drive away, Savannah touched her cheek where his lips had been, whatever was happening between them. It was moving fast and heading toward complications she couldn't even imagine. But for the first time since her world had fallen apart 3 years ago, she felt truly alive. The revelation came on a Tuesday morning, delivered by Detective Austin Reed in the form of a badge and a grim expression. Savannah was prepping vegetables when the bell chimed, and she looked up to see a tall, lean man in an ill-fitting suit. "Savannah Walker, that's me. Can I help you?" He flashed his badge. "Detective Reed, Houston PD. I'd like to ask you some questions about Nikolai Volkov." The knife in Savannah's hand stilled. "What about him?" "Ma'am, are you aware that Mr. Volkov is the head of the largest criminal organization in South Texas?" The words hit her like a physical blow. What?" Detective Reed slid into a booth. "The Volkov Bratva controls everything from money laundering to, well, let's just say they have their fingers in a lot of pies. We've been trying to build a case against him for 3 years." Savannah's legs felt weak. She gripped the counter for support. "You're saying he's in the Mafia?" "Russian organized crime, yes, ma'am. And from what we've observed, you and your establishment have become quite cozy with him and his son." The diner suddenly felt too small, too hot. Savannah thought about Alex's innocent questions about his father's work, about the bodyguards, about Nikolai's casual mention of territory. "Miss Walker, we know Mr. Volkov has been frequenting your diner. We also know you've been to his home. What we need to understand is the nature of your relationship." "There is no relationship," Savannah said quickly, then immediately felt guilty for the lie. "His son got lost and ended up here. I fed him, called his father. That's all. And the dinner at his mansion, the flowers he sent, the cooking lessons for his boy." Heat flooded her cheeks. They'd been watching her. "Alex is just a child. He needed someone to care about him. Miss Walker, I understand you've grown attached to the boy, but his father is a dangerous man. We have evidence linking him to multiple crimes." "Stop!" Savannah held up a hand. "Just stop." Detective Reed leaned forward. "We could use your help. Your access to Volkov and his son could be invaluable." "You want me to spy on them?" "I want you to help us put a very dangerous man behind bars where he belongs." Before Savannah could respond, the diner's bell chimed again. She looked up to see Alex bounding through the door, followed by Jackson's imposing figure. "Miss Savannah! Guess what? Papa said we can—" Alex stopped short when he saw Detective Reed, his expression immediately becoming guarded. "Who's this?" Alex asked quietly. "Just a customer, sweetheart," Savannah managed. Detective Reed stood studying Alex with obvious interest. "And you must be Alexander Volkov. I've heard a lot about you, son." "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," Alex said, moving closer to Jackson, who had stepped protectively forward. "Smart boy. Your father teach you that?" Jackson's hand moved to his jacket, and Savannah suddenly realized how quickly the situation could escalate. "Detective Reed, I think you should leave." "Of course. But Miss Walker, think about what we discussed." He nodded to Alex. "Tell your father Detective Reed said hello." After he left, the diner felt charged with tension. Alex looked between Savannah and Jackson with worried eyes. Was that man a policeman? "Yes, sweetheart." "Was he asking about Papa?" Savannah's heart broke at the resignation in his young voice. He was just asking some routine questions. But Alex wasn't fooled. "Papa says police don't always understand his business. He says they think he's bad, but he's not bad. He just does what he has to do to protect our family." The simple, loyal defense of his father made Savannah's chest tighten. Whatever Nikolai Volkov might be, he was this child's hero. "Jackson," Alex said quietly, "we should go home." Papa needs to know about the policeman. As they prepared to leave, Alex hugged Savannah tightly. You're not going to stop being my friend, are you? Even if Papa has to go away sometimes. Oh, sweetheart, no. I'll always be your friend. But as she watched them drive away, Savannah wondered if that was a promise she could keep. That evening she was closing up when a familiar black Mercedes pulled up outside. Her heart hammered as Nikolai emerged, but this time he was alone. His usual composed demeanor was replaced by something harder, more dangerous. He entered the diner like a storm front, his pale eyes finding hers immediately. We need to talk. Nikolai, Not here. He glanced around the empty diner. My car. Now. In the car, the silence was deafening. Detective Reed paid you a visit today, Nikolai said finally. Yes. What did he tell you? Savannah stared at her hands. He told me who you really are, what you really do. And what do you think I really do? Savannah. The way he said her name made her shiver. He said you're the head of a criminal organization, that you're involved in terrible things. Nikolai was quiet for a long moment. And do you believe him? I don't know what to believe anymore. Look at me. Reluctantly, she raised her eyes to his. In the dim light, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. I have never lied to you, Savannah. I have never claimed to be something I'm not. But I have also never told you the complete truth about my life. So tell me now. He studied her face for a long moment. My family came to America when I was 15. We had nothing, no money, no connections, no legal way to survive. My father tried to build an honest life. But honest work doesn't pay enough to feed a family or protect them from predators. His jaw tightened. When my parents were killed in what the police called a random robbery, I learned that honest men die poor and forgotten. So you chose crime instead? I chose survival. I chose power. I chose to never be helpless again. His voice was flat, matter-of-fact. Yes. I run an organization that operates outside the law. Yes, I have done things that would horrify you, but everything I do to protect what's mine. Savannah felt tears prick her eyes. And Alex? What kind of life is this for him? The kind where he'll never be hungry, never be powerless, never watch the people he loves die because he couldn't protect them. You think I don't know that? The mask slipped, revealing raw pain underneath. You think I don't lie awake at night wondering if I'm destroying the one pure thing in my life? But this is the world I was born into, Savannah. This is the only world I know how to navigate. They sat in silence, the weight of his confession settling between them. Finally, Savannah spoke. Detective Reed wants me to help him build a case against you. Nikolai's expression didn't change. And will you? I don't know. I see. He reached for the door handle. Then I think it's best if you stay away from Alex. And from me. Nikolai, wait. But he was already out of the car, signaling to Jackson to drive her home. As the Mercedes pulled away, Savannah realized she was crying. The next 3 days passed in a blur of misery. Alex didn't come to the diner, and Savannah found herself constantly watching the door. The cooking lessons they'd planned, the chess games, the simple joy of having someone to care for. All of it was gone. You're in love with him, Lily May said finally. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Savannah wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Somewhere between chess games and cooking lessons, between glimpses of vulnerability and moments of unexpected tenderness, she had fallen for Nikolai Volkov. It doesn't matter what I feel, she said finally. He's right. I should stay away. But fate had other plans. On Friday evening, as Savannah was cleaning the grill, the diner's front window exploded inward. She screamed, diving behind the counter, as glass rained down around her. Through the shattered window, she could see men in dark clothing moving toward the entrance. Where is Volkov's woman? A voice shouted in accented English. Terror flooded her system as she realized they were talking about her. The front door burst open and heavy footsteps approached her hiding place. Then suddenly, gunfire erupted outside, followed by shouting in Russian. The footsteps in her diner retreated hastily, and she heard cars speeding away. Strong hands were pulling her to her feet, and she found herself looking into Nikolai's pale blue eyes. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her frantically, checking for injuries. "I'm okay. What just happened?" The Romanov family decided to send a message. His jaw was tight with fury. "They wanted to hurt me by hurting you." The implication hit her like a sledgehammer. "This is because of me. Because I know you." "This is because of me," he corrected grimly. "Because I allowed myself to care about you and my enemies noticed." As police sirens wailed in the distance, Nikolai cupped her face in his hands. "I'm sorry, Savannah. I'm so sorry I brought this into your life." Looking into his eyes, seeing the genuine anguish there, Savannah finally understood. This was why he'd tried to push her away. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. "Take me home," she whispered. "Your apartment isn't safe anymore. They know where you live, where you work." He paused, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "Come home with me. Let me protect you." As she nodded, Savannah realized she'd made her choice. Whatever came next, whatever the cost, she was choosing Nikolai and Alex. She was choosing love over safety, family over solitude. The Volkov mansion had been transformed into a fortress. Armed guards patrolled the grounds, security cameras monitored every entrance, and bulletproof glass had been installed. Savannah felt like she was living in a beautiful prison, but she couldn't deny feeling safer. Alex had been overjoyed to see her, though confused by the circumstances. Nikolai had explained simply that some bad men had tried to hurt Miss Savannah, so she was staying with them until it was safe. The 8-year-old had accepted this with the resilience of a child who'd learned not to ask too many questions. "Miss Savannah, will you help me make pancakes for breakfast?" Alex asked, bouncing into the kitchen where she sat nursing her second cup of coffee. 3 days had passed since the attack. "Of course, sweetheart, but shouldn't you ask your father first?" "Papa's in his office with the scary men," Alex said matter-of-factly. "They've been talking all night about the Romanovs." Savannah's stomach clenched. She'd heard raised voices and rapid Russian coming from Nikolai's study. As they mixed pancake batter, Alex chatted about school and chess, but Savannah could see the tension in his small shoulders. "Alex," she said gently, "are you scared?" He paused in his stirring, considering the question with seriousness. "Sometimes. But Papa always keeps us safe. He says family is the most important thing, and he'll never let anything happen to his family. And he considers me family now." "Don't you want to be family?" Alex's blue eyes were wide with worry. Savannah's heart squeezed. "More than anything, sweetheart." "Good, because I already picked out your room for when you marry Papa." The innocent statement made her laugh despite everything. "Alex, your father and I aren't—" "Yes, you are," he said with 8-year-old certainty. "Papa looks at you the way he looked at Mama in the pictures." Before Savannah could respond, Nikolai appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked exhausted, his usually perfect hair disheveled, and his white shirt wrinkled. The platinum Rolex on his wrist caught the morning light as he rubbed his face wearily. "Good morning," he said, his accent thicker than usual. "Papa, Miss Savannah is making pancakes." "That sounds perfect, Malish." Nikolai's smile for his son was genuine, but Savannah could see the strain around his eyes. "Why don't you go get dressed for school while I talk to Miss Savannah?" After Alex bounded upstairs, Nikolai poured himself coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. "I'm sorry you had to hear that. The discussions with my associates can get heated." "What's happening with the Romanovs?" He was quiet for a long moment. "It's being handled." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I can give you." His pale eyes met hers. "Savannah, there are parts of my world that I will never expose you to, not because I don't trust you, but because I need to protect what's left of your innocence." "I'm not innocent anymore, Nikolai. The moment those men came into my diner looking for Volkov's woman, I lost any claim to innocence." The words seemed to hit him physically. He set down his coffee cup with careful precision. "That should never have happened. I should have been more careful." "Should have been more careful about what? Caring about me?" "Yes." The admission was stark, honest. "Caring about you has put you in danger. It's put Alex in danger." Savannah moved closer, drawn by the pain in his voice. "And do you regret it?" "I should." His hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "I should regret every moment I've spent with you, every smile you've given my son, every time you've made me feel like a man instead of a monster." "But you don't?" "No," he whispered, his forehead touching hers. "God help me. I don't regret a single second." The kiss was inevitable, born of 3 days of fear and longing, and the desperate need to affirm life in the face of danger. His lips were gentle at first, questioning, but when she responded by threading her fingers through his hair, the kiss deepened into something urgent and claiming. "Papa! Miss Savannah! The pancakes are burning!" They broke apart at Alex's shout, both breathing hard. Savannah turned to rescue breakfast, while Nikolai composed himself, but she could feel his eyes on her, burning with promises they couldn't voice in front of his son. Later that morning, after Alex had been escorted to school, she found Nikolai in his study. The room was all dark wood and leather, with maps of Houston spread across a massive desk. "Is this what your life is always like?" she asked. "More or less." He signed a document without looking up. "Though usually without the complication of protecting someone He trailed off, then met her eyes. "Someone I care about." "Nikolai, what exactly is happening with the Romanovs?" He leaned back in his chair, studying her face. "Alexei Romanov has been trying to move into Houston territory for 2 years. The attack on your diner was his way of declaring war. And what are you going to do about it? What I always do, protect what's mine." The possessive way he said it made her pulse quicken. "What does that mean, practically speaking?" "It means that by tomorrow night the Romanov problem will be permanently resolved." The casual way he discussed what was clearly going to be violence made her stomach turn. "You're going to kill him." "I'm going to eliminate a threat to my family." His voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes were watchful. "Does that frighten you?" Savannah considered the question honestly. A month ago the idea would have horrified her. Now, looking at this man who'd shown her such tenderness, who loved his son with fierce devotion, she found her moral compass spinning. "It should frighten me," she said finally. "But all I can think about is that he tried to hurt Alex. He tried to hurt me. And you're going to make sure he can never do that again." Something shifted in Nikolai's expression, surprise, perhaps, or relief. "You understand, then, what this life requires? I understand that you do terrible things for good reasons. I understand that you're not a monster, even if you sometimes have to act like one." She leaned forward. "And I understand that I love you anyway." The words hung in the air between them, bold and irrevocable. Nikolai went very still, his pale eyes searching her face. "Savannah, I know it's complicated, I know it's dangerous, I know you think you're protecting me by keeping me at arm's length, but I'm tired of pretending this isn't real." She stood, moving around the desk to face him. "I love you, Nikolai Volkov. I love your son, and I want to be part of this family, whatever that means." He rose slowly, his hands coming up to cup her face. "You don't know what you're asking for. Then tell me, show me. Let me choose with full knowledge instead of trying to make the choice for me." For a long moment, they stood there in silence. Then Nikolai's phone rang, shattering the moment. "Volkov," he answered curtly, then switched to rapid Russian. Savannah watched his expression grow darker. When he hung up, his face was grim. "What is it?" "Romanov has Alex's school surrounded. He's demanding a meeting." Terror flooded her system. "Is Alex safe?" "For now. But Romanov knows that threatening Alex is the one thing guaranteed to bring me out into the open." Nikolai was already moving, pulling on his jacket, checking the gun holstered beneath his arm. "Jackson is coordinating with the security team. Alex won't be harmed." "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." "Nikolai, he's using Alex to get to you. He's using both of us. This ends now, and I'm not hiding while you face it alone." "Savannah, if something happens to me, nothing is going to happen to you." She grabbed his hands, forcing him to look at her. "We're going to get Alex. We're going to end this threat. And we're going to come home. Together." The conviction in her voice seemed to steady him. You realize that after tonight, there's no going back. If you stay with me, you're choosing this life permanently. I chose this life the moment I fed a hungry little boy in my diner. She rose on her toes to kiss him, pouring all her love and determination into the contact. Now let's go get our son. The meeting was set for the abandoned warehouse district near the port of Houston. As their convoy wound through the industrial landscape, Savannah tried to calm her racing heart. "Remember," Nikolai said, checking his weapon one final time, "stay behind Jackson at all times. If shooting starts, get down and stay down." The warehouse was a cavernous space filled with shadows. Romanov was waiting in the center with armed men, his silver hair gleaming under harsh lights. Alex stood beside him, small and defiant, his chin raised in pure Volkov stubbornness. "Nikolai," Romanov called out, "so good of you to come, and you brought the woman, how sentimental. Let the boy go, Alexei, your quarrel is with me. But the boy is so much more effective leverage, don't you think? Just as the woman was effective bait." Savannah felt Nikolai tense beside her, his fury carefully controlled but palpable. "What do you want?" "Houston. All of it. Your territory, your operations, your contacts. In exchange, the boy lives." "And if I refuse?" Romanov shrugged. "Then you watch your son die, and I take Houston anyway." The silence stretched taut. Then Alex spoke, his young voice carrying clearly across the warehouse. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Romanov." The Russian boss looked down at him with amusement. "Oh? And why is that, little prince?" "Because you hurt Miss Savannah, and Papa never lets anyone hurt his family." The simple statement, delivered with 8-year-old certainty, seemed to shift something in the atmosphere. Nikolai stepped forward, his presence suddenly filling the space like a gathering storm. "You made this personal when you threatened my son," he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "You made it unforgivable when you attacked the woman I love." "Love?" Romanov laughed. "The great Nikolai Volkov, brought low by a waitress?" "She took care of my son when she had nothing to gain," Nikolai continued, his pale eyes never leaving Romanov's face. "Now I'll take care of her for the rest of my life." The declaration rang through the warehouse like a vow, and Savannah felt tears prick her eyes. Even facing mortal danger, he was claiming her, protecting her, choosing their family above everything else. What happened next was swift and decisive. Jackson and the security team moved with military precision, and within minutes, the threat that had hung over their heads was permanently eliminated. Savannah kept her eyes closed through most of it, but when she opened them, Nikolai was holding Alex, and both of them were safe. "Is it over?" she asked quietly. "It's over," Nikolai confirmed, his voice rough with emotion. "We can go home now." As they walked out of the warehouse together, Nikolai carrying Alex, his free hand clasped firmly in Savannah's, she realized that home wasn't a place anymore. It was this: a man who would move heaven and earth to protect his family, and a little boy who'd claimed her heart from the very beginning. They were her family now in all the complicated, dangerous, beautiful ways that mattered. Years later, Savannah would look back on that night in the warehouse as the moment her real life began. Not the quiet, safe existence she'd been living before Alex wandered into her diner, but the rich, complicated, love-filled life she'd never dared to dream possible. The Lone Star Diner reopened 6 months later in a better neighborhood, with better security and a clientele that included some of Houston's most powerful families. Savannah still cooked her grandmother's recipes, but now she did it in a state-of-the-art kitchen that Nikolai had insisted on designing himself. Nikolai had kept his word about legitimizing parts of his operations. The shipping company, the restaurants, the real estate investments, all legal now, all above board. He would never be completely clean, but he'd found ways to build something lasting for his son's future. Alex, now 12, had grown into a confident young man who spoke 3 languages fluently and could beat most adults at chess. He still spent his afternoons at the diner, helping Savannah with prep work and charming customers with his observations about life. On a warm spring evening, as Savannah finished closing up the diner, she found Nikolai waiting for her by the back door. Even after all this time, the sight of him still made her pulse quicken. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar as always, revealing that intriguing tattoo, and his platinum Rolex caught the light from the security lamps. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Volkov?" he asked, using the name that still made her smile. "Always," she replied, slipping into his arms for their evening ritual. As they drove through Houston's glittering streets toward the home they'd built together, Savannah reflected on the strange turns life could take. She'd started with nothing but a failing diner and a broken heart. Now she had everything she'd never known she wanted. A husband who loved her fiercely, a son who'd claimed her as his own, and a family that had been forged in danger but tempered by devotion. At home, they found Alex in the kitchen, attempting to recreate one of her grandmother's recipes with mixed results. Flour covered every surface, and something was definitely burning on the stove. "Need some help there, Chef?" Savannah asked, laughing as she surveyed the chaos. "I was trying to surprise you," Alex said sheepishly, "but I think I need more practice." "That's what I'm here for," she replied, ruffling his dark hair. "Now, let's see what we can salvage from this disaster." As the three of them worked together to create something edible from Alex's ambitious experiment, Savannah felt the deep contentment that had become her constant companion. This was her family, complicated, dangerous, loving, and absolutely perfect in all its imperfections. Outside, Houston hummed with life and possibility, but inside their kitchen, surrounded by laughter and the smell of fresh bread, Savannah knew she was exactly where she belonged. She had taken in a hungry boy and found her destiny. She had loved a dangerous man and discovered her strength. She had chosen family over safety and found that sometimes the greatest risks led to the greatest rewards. In the end, that was all that mattered. The family they'd built together, one meal at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time, and it was more than enough.